Good evening. How are you? I am Trudy, and I'm here to actually give you. It's about time, and we're going to continue in the book of Job tonight. So we're going to do Job 29 through 31. Want to make sure that we um, investigate and continue to talk about what's going on with Job. Uh, Brother Job has been going through quite a bit of grief and calamity with the things that have been happening to him. So we're going to continue on with him over in 29 right now. So 29 starts off and it says, and Job again took up his discourse and said, so here we're talking about Job continuing to talk about his displeasure. He's basically starting over to actually make a statement to his friends because we heard about in the previous chapters yesterday where his friends were, instead of consoling him, they just were digging the knife deeper and deeper and deeper and making accusations and actually accusing him of so many things. So we find here that Job is actually talking to them again. Good evening, Sister Felicia. Thank you for joining me. So at this point, what he's saying, oh, that I were as in the months gone by, as in the days when God watched over me. So what he's talking about is that the past, he's reminiscing on what he used to have and what he used to be able to do, and that he had children, that he was wealthy, he was happy, and he had an immense closeness with God, which he was actually talking about at this point because he talks about those days that when God watched over him. And he said, when his lamp shone on my head, and by his light I walked through darkness. What he talked about was basically carrying um, the divine light of God, the promise, the protection. Because as you remember, when Satan approached God and he wanted to talk about, you know, how what he could do, that if he removed the hedge of protection from Job, what Job would actually do. So now Job is going back, kind of reminiscing about those times and talking about those things that have happened. And as he talked about the light that just shined on him, you know, it was the constellation that he carried this light of God. He had that protection upon him at that point. And then he said, in his light I walked through darkness. He had divine illumination. God was with him in everything. And this is why Satan approached it that particular way, to actually say, if you remove the hedge of protection from him, I guarantee you this is what's going to happen with him. So then it goes on and says, and I was in the prime of my days. So it's at the height of where he was when the friendship of God was over my tent. So when God's covering rested over me and rested over my tent, meaning that I was in communion with him, he was covering me. Those things, we had an intimacy. Jesus knew me, God knew me, and I knew him, and we knew each other intimately. So I was protected in the comfort of him. So this is what Job is going back, and he's actually reminiscing about those times. And then he says, when the Almighty has was yet with me, and my children were around me, and my steps were bathed in butter, and the rocks poured out for me streams of oil. So he's talking about my life that I used to have and cherish. I loved my children. Everything flowed for me. I was not experiencing lack on any side of who I was. These are the things that he's thinking about that used to be. And then he goes on, he says that when I went out to the gate of the city, when I took my seat in the square, the young men saw me and hid themselves. The old men arose and stood. The prince stopped talking and put their hands over their mouth. The voice of the nobles were hushed, and their tongues stuck to the roof of their mouth. So he's saying that I was such a upright, because remember we talked about before his character back in Job 1, that he was blameless. Not that he was sinless, but he was blameless. He was an upright man. We built a lot of time talking about his character, what he did with people and for people. So here he's going back and talk about when I used to speak, he said when I came around, the young boys would run and hide because I had that type of reverential presence when I came around. He says, and then when the older people saw me, they stood up. So, anytime that when you acknowledge someone, you stand, you are rise to actually acknowledge their presence. So he's saying this is what happened. And it talks about that when he went out into the square, that lets us know that this had to be a big space because he went outside of these gates. He went outside of the gates of the city. So this was a big expanse. This was not just a little village, but there were plenty of people. And then he says that the old man arose and stood. The prince stopped talking. The nobles put their hands over their mouth because when Job came along and he would be sharing so much wisdom and insight that all they could do was be in awe and just listen to him. And this is what he's saying. And then he goes on and he says, "For when the ears heard it, it called me blessed. And when the eyes saw it, it gave witness of me." So his word was bond. There was no one that actually challenged his word. So whenever he spoke, then people would listen. Kind of like that old saying when it says, when E.F. Hutton speaks, everybody listens. This is kind of the same type of reverence that Job was actually carrying at this point. So that lets us know that Job was deemed as a leader in the city. His word carried some weight. He had weight on his word. So then when we go on and we go down a little further, he talks about, because I delivered the poor who cry for help and the orphans who had no helper. The blessings of the one ready to perish came upon me, and I made the widow's heart sing for joy. So he talks about his benevolence. We talked about him having philanthropic type work that he did in the community where he lived at. So he's talking about these things that when I saw those that were poor, I just didn't allow them to be poor. I shared with what I had with these people. If someone was hungry, I would feed you. If you had no place to stay, I would give you a place to stay. If with a widow's heart, where they have to worry about what's going to happen to me, because back in those particular days, that the man was the dominant breadwinner. And whenever you have a woman that does not have a husband or does not have sons, then it talks about her level of potential poverty that she's going to go in because women did not do the type of work or earn that particular way in those times. So he's talking about, I have done these things and I have helped these people, and these people have not had to go through all these things around me. I didn't think about me, I thought about everybody else. And then he goes on to say, um, I put on righteousness and it clothed me. My justice was like a robe and a turban. I was eyes to the blind and feet to the lame. I was a father to the needy, and I investigated the cases which I did not know. And I broke the jaw of the wicked and snatched the prey from his teeth. So he was saying that I've provided, I've protected, I've been, everything that I could be, that I always was sharing and caring for everyone that was around me. I did not do as, because we have to remember, we talked about in the beginning that Job was a wealthy man, that he had multiple assets that would designate him as being rich during those particular days. So he never uh, used his wealth to set him apart from anything, but he used his wealth to actually help those that were in need. And when he saw problems, how he immediately addressed them. He didn't just shun away from them and just say, that's not my issue, but he took it and he made it his issue. So then we see that he talks about in 18, where he says that then I thought, I shall die in my nest, and I shall multiply my days as the sand. My root is spread out to the waters, and dew lies all night on my branches. So here he's talking about again his former times of security and convenience. And so when he starts to talk about how secure he felt in his life, that his nest, after a good long life, he was very, very secure before. There was nothing that could shake his faith because he knew he was okay. But now he's looking at these different things that are going on. And he's talking about, and multiply my days as the sand. Now, when I was studying this, they started talking about that he was talking about his resurgence or renewal, because they said that sand kind of translated to the phoenix, which we always know that the phoenix arises after disaster and is stronger and greater than before. So this is kind of how he's talking in this particular phase at this point, and that he was just blessed. And then he talked about the roots is spread out like water, which is more so like a metaphor of a healthy tree. That when a healthy tree is spread out by water, the roots actually go and they drink as necessary, and the trees continue to bear fruit all season long because they have a constant feed. So he's talking about what it used to be like. This is how Job lived his life. Then when we go to 21, it says, men listened to me and waited and kept silent for my counsel. After my words, they did not speak again, and my speech settled as the dew. They waited for me as for the rain, and they opened their mouths wide as for spring rain. So he was saying that his word was bond. We're talking about somebody that it is his word. No one even tried to even challenge the word of Job, because Job had such credibility that whenever he spoke, that was it. No one dared try to do anything. He said that they waited around as you do for rain. No one asked, when is it going to rain? When is it going to rain? Or try to go challenge someone about when it rained. They never did that. But after Job is going back and talking about how esteemed he was. Now, remember, he's been going through this battle with his friends, back and forth, trying to still hold on and validate his character. Although they keep accusing him of undisclosed sins and different things like that, but he's still holding on to who he is. And he's actually speaking back to them. Because I tell you, I think Job is one of the greatest clapback artists that there are. So he's telling him, just in case you don't know who I was or who I am, let me remind you of who I am. And then he goes on to say that if I mocked at them, they did not believe it. So if I made jokes with them, they believed whatever I told them. I had that kind of weight that when I spoke, that people took it as bond, as they say, my word is bond. What I tell you, that's what you can believe. You can take it to the bank. This is the kind of weight that Job had where he was. And my light of my countenance, they did not cast down. So there was nothing that was bad said about him. It was like who I was, it was just who I am, and they reveled in that and they supported it. And it was just, that was just it. I was he was me. And I am Job. And he's like, this is what, and I chose a way for them and sat as their chief. I was a leader. So I dealt as a king in the army, as one who comforts mourners. So he's talking about who he was, how he handled his business, and that he came from a very great place of authority where he was. People deemed him as a leader. So that's 29. So then we go over to 30, and it says, um, but now those younger than I mock me. Now we see over in 29, the younger ones, when they used to see him, they ran away. Why? Not out of fear, but out of reverence, because they didn't feel like they were worthy to stand before him. But now we have it over here that the young ones, when they see here, they're mocking him. It's just like having where we see older people, and in their heyday they were someone, and then they might dress the same way or have certain sayings or different things like that, or ways that they do things that used to mean something a long time ago. But now you have the kids that coming along and they're looking at him like, old timer, what are you doing, you old man? There's no reverence for who he is and what he has brought to the table. So now all of what he sacrificed is no longer respected. So this is what he's saying here: whose father I disdain to put with the dogs of my flock. He's talking about you, you hoodlums. You were nothing. Your fathers were not even worthy to care for the dogs that watched the flock that I had. But yet you choose now to mock me. So he's talking about the level of humiliation that he's actually starting to actually experience. And he indeed, what good was the strength of their hands to me? Vigor had perished from them. From what the famine they are gone, and gnaw the dry ground by night in waste and desolation. So he's talking about these unworthy people. These were people that I wouldn't even allow around me. And that's saying a lot, because Job was so open to help. But here he had labeled these people unworthy. And now we have them here that these same people, they would be considered the good for nothing fathers. They weren't worth their own salt. Here are these people that couldn't even take care of yourself, couldn't take care of you, couldn't take care of a family, because they didn't have what was necessary to be called fathers, to be called men, because there was no respect for them. They didn't have respect for them own selves. And then he says, who pluck mallow by the bushes, and whose food is the root of the broom shrub. So he's like, you can't even earn an earnest living. You have to go back and you get leftovers or garbage that's out there, or you eat things that people won't eat, because you're not uh, good enough to put in the work to make sure that you can earn a living to actually feed yourself. So then he goes on and says, they are driven from the community. They shout against them as against a thief. Like when people see you coming, they say, get on out of here, get on out of here. It's almost like how people do homeless people today. Homeless people don't have places to go. So wherever they can find a place of rest, that's what they do. But what happens? Those that are in places that don't want those type of people around them, get away from here. They shoo you away, shoo you away. So this is what he was talking about, the character of what these people were, that had the audacity now to come and make mockery of him. Like, let me give you the character of who you were. So they that dwell in dreadful valleys, in holes of the earth and the rock, among the bushes tribe, they cry out. Under the nettles, they are gathered together. So you didn't even have an accurate place to stay. You stayed in the hills. Whatever little cleft in a rock that you could find, you didn't even have a proper place to live. But now you want to talk about me, you want to mock me because of what I'm going through. And it says, fools, even those without a name, they were scourged from the land. And now I have become their taunt. He said, now how dare you? After all that I was, but now you have the audacity to feel that you're superior to me because you're looking at me in my low place right now. So he's did the ultimate clapback. He's read them all the way down. He talked about them not being worthy, not having a place to stay, not having any type of integrity. But now you want to turn around like your life has changed, but you're still that same person. So then he goes on to say, uh, I have uh, I have even become a byword to them. They abhor me and stand aloof from me, and they do not refrain from spitting at my face. Now, to spit in someone's face is probably the most disgusting and disrespectful thing that you can do to a person. That you have no common decency or courtesy for them. That when you see them, you think that they are so unworthy and so just not even considered a human at that point that you just spit in their face. And this is what we're talking about, going from great esteem to now they disrespect him to a level that they can readily spit in his face. So then we go on and we talk about because he was loosened his bowstring and afflicted me. So now, because God has removed the protection from Job, this is what he's saying, that God removed this covering for me. Now you guys feel like that it's free game. You can go and you can do anything and say anything you want to me because I am not that person and I'm afflicted. That only God did this. None of you guys did this. Nobody else did anything to me, but it was just that protection that was removed from me. And then he goes on to say, uh, they have cast off the bridle before me. Oh, the right hand, their brood arises. They thrust aside my feet and build up against me in their ways of destruction. So now we have someone that when he came in their presence, they used to stand, they used to run away, they used to listen. But now all of those things, where when it talks about bridling, when you bridle something, that means you contain it, you control it. So now they're just loose with it. They just say what they want to say about him. They discourage him. They humiliate him. Anything that they can do to him, not to help him up how he's helped everybody else, to give them sure footing in their situations. But now that he's in this position, this is how they choose to treat him. They break up my path. They profit from my destruction. No one restrains them. Now, as good as I've been to other people, you would have thought that somebody would have came to my rescue. Somebody, just somebody would have some common decency to say, that's not right. Let's not do that's still Job. Let's not do him that way. Let me feed him. Let me bring him in the house. Nobody did this. But as you remember when we talked about in 29, where he talked about that he took care of the needy, he made the widow's heart sing joy. He did all these things, but now when he finds himself in the point of need, there's no one to help him. Then it says, as though a wide breach, they came amid the tempest, they rolled on. The terrorists are turned against me. They pursue my honor as the wind, and my prosperity has passed away like the clouds. So he's saying that what they've done is overrun me just like I was a kingdom and there was a gaping hole, and everybody that wanted a chance just ran through and they came and attacked me. No one showed me any sympathy or protection to help me in this particular phase of where I am. Nobody helped me. But I'm sitting here, and all of those bad things that I used to keep away from everybody, how I protected everybody, they're now coming and turning against me. They're pursuing everything about me. They're tearing down everything about me. and my prosperity has passed away like a cloud. So when you'll have blue skies. They're all wonderful. When we look at them, they're blue skies. But the minute that a storm cloud comes, it starts with a wind. And then you start to see what was once beautiful clouds get blown away until we have this black clouds that actually come to let us know that a storm is brewing. And this is kind of like what Job is saying about what's happening now, that with his prosperity, that his wealth, that who he was, what he was used to, what made him Job, has now passed away like the clouds. And now my soul is poured out within me. Days of affliction have seized me. Now it tells us that this is a constant uh, thing that's happened to him over and over. Like they say, well, trouble don't last always. Well, Job probably is questioning that one, because he says, every day where I think it might be better tomorrow, that it's still the same thing. Says, my soul is poured out within me. Job is still at a point where he doesn't understand really what's going on and why this is actually happening to him. But what we do know is that Job is still dealing with this. He's still dealing with exactly what's going on with him. So then he talks about, at night it pierced my bones within me, and my gnawing pain takes no rest. By a great force, my garment is distorted. It binds me about as the collar of my coat. So he's saying that there is just no relief for me. There's just, I just cannot find any type of relief that is going on. He's talking about now his physical suffering, the agony of him actually suffering, what he's going through. Because at this point, you have to remember how much he's endured thus far. And he's looking for relief, as we're going to see, as he wants to die, but can't die. Now, isn't that a miserable feeling? Wanting to die because you're in so much pain and grief that you want to die, but yet it is not what you're afforded. It's like, then it starts to talk about the portion where he talks about his clothing were clutched, and he grabs me by the collar, and he throws me into the mud. It's just like God is taking him with all of these things that he's going through, and he's taking him by the collar and just twisting it tight. His clothes are just distorted. They're just wrapped up really tight. And he just can't get any relief anywhere that he goes. And the pain just will not cease. He has cast me into the mire. Just throw me in the mud. Just throw me away. Just with no care, no concern. And I think the biggest thing is that Job was saying and reconciling in his own mind, I have been good to people. I have done the right thing for people. I didn't mistreat people. I didn't use my wealth to misuse people. I didn't do these things, but yet I find myself suffering as if I was the type of people that I discouraged and kept away and protected others from. But here's what I'm dealing with at this point. So then he goes and says, and I have become like dust and ashes. That was a really significant point where he says, like dust and ashes, because you know that when something gets destroyed, it turns into ashes. So Job is talking about his disdain about his particular point in life right now, that he has been destroyed, that he's dust and ashes. He has nothing to hold on to. He is just totally destroyed from all that he had known to be. I cry out to thee for help, but thou dost not answer me. So he's talking about God at that point. He's like, I'm looking and I'm still talking and I'm still holding on to you, God, but yet you still don't answer me. At this point, Job is saying that he feels like God was against him. He's thinking this right now. Is God against me? I'm calling out to you, but yet you're not answering me. Now, have you ever been in a place like that that you feel like this is it for you, and you got, Lord, if you don't help me, there's no help for me. You have to answer me, God, answer me, God, and He's here at this particular point, asking God to answer him. Now, remember, before he had an intimate relationship with God, but now he's crying out and he hears no answer. Now, can you imagine the struggle with that? The struggle that once you walked heavily with God and that he answered with you and he supped with you, and then all of a sudden he became silent. Could you hold on to your faith? That's a question. Could you hold on to your faith in God's silence? Then he goes on and says that um, I stand up and thou dost not turn thy attention against me. Thou dost turn thy attention against me, meaning that he's not listening at all. Thou hast become cruel to me. So he's going through his mind because, Job's human. He's got feelings just like everybody else. But he's like, I haven't done anything. And yet I call out to you and you still don't answer me. And you're treating me cruelly. With the might of thy hand, thou dost persecute me. It's at your hand that you're doing this. At your hand. But Job is still at a place to try to figure out, what did I do? Thou lifts me up to the wind and causes me to ride. Means that I'm just gone, just no stability. Whichever way the wind goes, whatever befalls me, that's what happens. And it does thou dissolve me in a storm. So at this point, Job is actually trying to know, if is this it? God, is this how you're going to do it? Are you going to take me out at this point? Are you going to kill me? This is how you're going to kill me. You're going to put me in this type of storm and you're going to kill me? Is this what we're doing? And he says, for I know that thou wilt bring me to death and to the house of meeting for all the living. Job is just pleading basically at this point to say, after all that I've gone through and all that I've agonized with, that is this where you're bringing me? And it's almost like he's pleading to God for death so that he can get relief. But it reminds me, when I think about this particular verse here, that the song says, I almost let go. I was right at the verge of a breakthrough, but I couldn't see it. The devil thought he had me, but Jesus came and grabbed me, and he held me close so I wouldn't let go. I think this is kind of encapsulates that particular lyrics to that particular song right here, where Job found himself at, wishing to die because he felt like there was nothing more for him. There was no breakthrough. This was not going to turn, but not knowing that God had him the whole time, the whole entire time. That when things get hard in our lives sometimes and we can't make sense of it, we have to realize that it's not for us to make sense of, but all we have to do is put our trust in him and endure. Now, is that easier said than done? Yes. Look at the calamities that fell him. Most people at this point would have either tried to take their own self out or became such obscure person that they might have been living in the cliffs and the hills and stuff like that because they couldn't deal with the reality of where they were at this point. So then it goes on to say, yet does not one in a heap of ruins stretch out his hands, even sing the song. And he said, even when he finds people that are in ruins, you just out there, you have nothing, but yet I'm out with you, and you won't even give me a hand. You won't even give me a hand. You're no better than I am, but yet you cannot extend a courtesy to me. Talk about a man without a country. Job was a man without a country. He had no help. And then it talks about, was not my soul grieved for the needy? Did not hurt me? Did not do things? I just couldn't walk by and see someone in need and not help them. Then he goes on and he says, when I expected good, then evil came. When I waited for the light, then darkness came. All the things that I had based my life off of making sure that light was available for people, that I did not take my wealth and sit back and say, I have it, you don't have it. I made sure that I took care of everyone. I protected you, I fed you, I clothed you, I housed you. I made sure that everyone that was in my purview was taken care of. But here, now at my lowest point, I can't even get the people that are at the same level or under me to even give me any type of consideration. I am seen within and cannot relax. Days of affliction confront me. I go about mourning without comfort. Nobody's kind enough to him. Just say, Job, I'm so sorry. Even those friends that are with him, they have the audacity to be mad at him. Like, I'm not feeling sorry for you because you deserve this because you won't tell the truth. But he's saying, even where do I find comfort? I want to die and can't die. There's just nothing for me. And why am I even here? I can't find anybody to help me. He says, my skin turns black on me, and my bones burn with fever. Therefore, my harp is turned to the mourning, and my flute to the sound of those who weep. There's nothing happy in my life. My skin is from all of the disease and everything that's going on with his body. That he's basically rotting to death. His bones, because of the disease that are going on, he has infection, so he has fever. Yet with all of these going on and his poor and in poor sight and poor health that someone physically can actually see him in, nobody wants to help Job. Now I think that was one of the saddest part of Job's story, that he got down to that, in spite of looking the way he was. We have compassion. If we see a dog in the street that just looks like it's hungry or he's hurt or whatever, natural empathy makes you want to help the dog, help the person, help whoever it is. But Job couldn't even get that type of empathy from the people that were around him. And some of them had had experiences with him where he helped them. Now we're going to go hurry on to 31. I have made a covenant with my eyes. How then could I gaze at a virgin? And what is the portion of God from above, or the heritage of the Almighty from on high? It's not calamity to the unjust and disaster to those who work iniquity. Now, what he's talking about here is that, when his boys start to try to tell him, you got some uncovered sins. So now he's going back and he's proclaiming his innocence. He's going back and examining all these different areas, and he's saying, I have made a covenant with my eyes. I made a covenant with God. Not that my eyes would not see, but I would stay within the covenant. that God has given that I should not look upon a young woman. So, what he's talking about at this point is how the eyes cause you to lust. And he's saying that he did not sin by looking at some young woman and lusting for her. Now, if we remember back the Roman and the Greek statues that they have, they're very sexualized when we look at a lot of those things, because a lot of those things they show the naked body. And what Job starts to talk about in this particular portion of the book is that he understood what God made him to look at. When he gave him a wife, he gave him a wife for his own adoration, for his own desires. That when you looked at someone else, that was not your right, and that you actually sinned, because anytime that you looked at a person and thought of them outside of just a regular person, but you thought about actions and things that could be done, then you were going against the covenant of God, because God's word basically said that once you have your wife, your wife is yours. The other person that is not your wife is not yours. Now, if you want to look at the nakedness of your wife, you're fine. You're within the guidelines. Like it says, and the bed shall and the bed the wedding bed shall not be defiled. Dude, that's who you have. That's who you've been given to, betrothed to. That is yours. You're allowed to look upon that person the way that you want to, because that's your assigned person. But you're not allowed to look at the young virgin and get aroused or have desires come up and think about the things that could happen or what you could do with that person, because her nakedness does not belong to you. This is what this covenant is that you start to talk about. Her nakedness did not belong to you. And so when he starts talking about that, he's not in any type of sin from that. So, if you're trying to say that's what I didn't do that. I did not do that. I have not made that covenant. I do not have to deal with immorality in regards to those things. I have not acted inappropriately. So, this is what he's actually telling us when he talks about, does he not see my ways and number all my steps? God, you're looking at me all the time. You're with me. I have nothing to hide. You're with me 24/7. You see how I'm living. Talking about living a holy life. You see how I live. So I have walked with falsehood, and my foot has hastened after deceit. Let him weigh me with accurate scales. He says, I've gone through all these different places and situations, but yet check my weight. I have not done anything that I should have not done to get out of your will. So then he goes on and he says, and let God know my integrity. Check my records. Run that reel back and check. Have you seen me look at any woman, any young virgin, other out of decency and morality, and have not looked upon her for my own lust? Now, when I was studying it, it talked about a lot of things that this is what happens sometimes, that when people don't understand the covenant um, behind lust, is that's why we have such a huge pornography industry right now. Why? Because it's got massive clients, that people look on the nakedness of other people and they covet that kind of thing. And they let their minds take them different places and all these different things. But Job is saying that's not what I do. Now, not to say they had the same thing going on back then. So what's actually going on? We know prostitution, pornography, all those things have been back then. They may be have been called by different names, but it was the same basis that was going on during that time. So his eyes were not used for arousal. This is what he's trying to say. And he makes sure that he understands the spouse that he was given is the nakedness that he was entitled to look at without any guilt and shame. Then, if we skip down, he says, if my heart has been enticed by a woman, or if I have lurked at my neighbor's doorway, may my wife grind for another. So he's going on to that place that he said, like when you were kids, you say, I swear, if I did that, that a whole ton of bricks fall on me right now. Or the ones God strike me down if I'm lying. This is kind of the intensity of what he's using right now. He's saying that the thing that was most precious to him, which was his wife, that if he was lying about what was going on, about his behavior, he had not became a peeping Tom or did any of those type of things. I didn't sit and look and covet in my mind what I would do and all these things. I did none of these things. If you find me guilty, you take my wife and you let her grind for another and let others kneel down before her. This is like very, very um this is very degrading what he's saying. That take my wife and do what you want to. Let not just one, but whoever's there, make her a slave to you, that she has to do whatever you want her to do. And let others do to her. This is what he's talking about. For that would be a lustful crime. Moreover, it would be an iniquity punishable by judges. For it would be the fire that consumes to Abaddon and would uproot all my increase. So he's saying that if I did this, this would happen to my wife, and that it would take away everything of who I was and who I said I was. It will uproot everything. If this be true, this is what you can do. If I have despised the claim of my male or female slaves when they filed a complaint against me, when then could I do when God arises and when he calls me to account, what will I answer to him? Now he's Job, remember he was rich, so he had servants and he had slaves, he had all these things. And you have to remember that the servants basically were considered subhuman. We all know that from ancient days to our American history, where when you were considered a slave, you were not considered a human. Subhuman is what you were considered. So you didn't have all the rights to right fair treatment and integrity and morality and things like that. So he's saying, have you found that in me? That when anyone has come against me, did I mistreat them? Did I beat them for complaining? Did I do any of these things? So he said, check my record. Check my record. Did I do any of those things? He says, did not he who made me in the womb make him? He says, I don't see myself any different. And the same one fashions us in the womb. The same God that made them made me. So I don't have any differences that I feel about those people, that I treat them exactly as I want to be treated. I have kept the poor from their desires, or have caused the eyes of the widow to fail. Didn't I help? Didn't I show them a better way? Didn't I keep the widow from having to do other things to survive? He said that I brought singing and joy back to the widow's heart. So then he goes on and he says, or have eaten my morsels alone, or the orphans have not shared it. But from my youth, he grew up with me as with a father. And from infancy, I guided her. So he's talking about these people that have worked with him, that I treated them like family, like they belonged to me, like they were my children. I never made a difference with them. I didn't separate. And then he goes on further. He says, if I have lifted my hands against the orphan because I saw I was supported in the gates, let my shoulders fall from the sockets and my arms be broken off at the elbows. So he's saying that this thing again, God, if you see that I've done anything, just let my arms fall off. Just let them fall off. I don't even need them. If you find that in me. So he's assured that he knows that he has not done anything wrong with that to make that type of claim that he wants God to remove body parts from him. He's just like, just take it. Then it goes on and says, for I have put my confidence in gold and called fine gold my trust. I have gloated because my wealth was great and because my hands had secured so much. If I have looked at the sun when it shone or the moon going in splendor, and my heart secretly became enticed. So he's saying, I haven't served anyone or put anything before you. Yes, gold and silver, I had all those things, but they had their appropriate place. He said, I didn't secretly run around and serve idols. I didn't serve the moon or I didn't serve the sun. And one of the interesting things that in my study where it was talking about that when people couldn't get to the idols to be able to kiss them or touch them, they would throw kisses at them. And I thought about that and I said, wow, we repeat a lot of things that we really don't understand why we're doing things. And a throwing of a kiss is you're throwing a kiss. And I just did not know because that was one of the practices that they outlined that they would do to the sun, that they could not get to the sun, sun god, or uh, that form of idolatry, and that's what they would do when they were away from it. That they would throw a kiss at it. So he was saying that I did not participate in any of this kind of stuff. That too would have been an iniquity calling for judgment, for I would have denied God above. That if I participated in these things, I would then deny who God is in all of his wisdom, that he is the ultimate creator of all things. So he said, I didn't secretly do those things. I'm not holding those things in my heart. Then let's go on and skip down a little bit. He says, have I covered my transgressions like Adam? Did I act like Adam? Did I act like God? You didn't hear me. You didn't see me. I'm naked, but you're not supposed to know I'm naked. I hold on, just hold on, God. Wait. I gotta find something. I'll be there in a minute. Did I do that? He said I didn't do any of that. And he says, oh, that I have one to hear. Behold, here is my signature. Let the Almighty answer me, and the indictment which my adversary was written. Surely I would carry it on my shoulder. I would bind it to myself like a crown. I would declare to him the number of steps. Like a prince, I would approach him. This he's going through and he's asking him to hear and look at my character. He's constantly trying to get this across. He says, if my land cries out against me and its furrows weep together, if I have eaten its fruit without money, if I've stolen, if I've done anything, or have caused its owner to lose their lives, let briar grow instead of wheat, and stinkweed instead of barley. The word of Job are ended. So he's saying, if I did anything, if I've stolen from someone, if I've caused them to lose their life, if I've caused any injustice against anyone, let the briars grow instead of wheat. The briars are sticky thorn things. Let those thorns grow instead of things that would feed, that would bring profit. Wheat is money that would bring profit. And let stinkweed instead of barley. Wheat and barley were tradable commodities that signified wealth that you needed to eat. And the owners that had the largest amounts of those were the ones that held all the marbles. They were the ones that were richer. He says, and the words of Job are ended. So we see here now, Job has basically talked to his friends again and tried to get some compassion from them. And he's gone through every aspect of his life and his ongoings to talk about, this is who I am, that I have not changed. Yet I've done all these things and I've been all these things to everybody else, but in my time of need, I can't get anything or anyone. And if God has found anything in me, take me right now, snatch my arms out, knock me, take my wife, do all these things. So he was assured that he was correct in where he was, that he had not done any type of sin, and he was trying to reassure them. So thank you for sticking with me. I went a little bit over, but this is just such an exciting story. You have to really dig into this because Job shows the type of endurance that cannot be seen any place other than in this book. So thank you for joining us. Make sure that you're here tomorrow at the same time at 6 o'clock and join us for the continuation of the book of Job. Thanks for joining. It's about time. Have a great day.